We're learning more about the events leading up to James Foley's death. The company he worked for as a journalist, Global Post, says that it did receive a ransom demand from ISIS, this terrible terrorist group, for $132 million. That's what ISIS was asking for Foley's release. We don't know what Global Post did with that demand, but we do know that the United States did make an effort to rescue Foley by sending an elite team of commandos on what was supposed to be a rescue mission, but unfortunately they could not find Foley. I want to discuss this. I want to bring in Arsalan Iftikhar, an international human rights attorney, Charlie Cooper, a researcher at the Quilliam Group, a counter-extremism think tank, and Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf, the chairman for the Cordoba Initiative. His goal is to improve relations between the Muslim world and the West. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Charlie, I want to begin with you and the investigation. The British authorities say they can identify this person, this terrorist who executed James Foley. They say he might be a member of this trio of three that call themselves the Beatles. What can you tell us about them?
Well, first of all, it doesn't come as a surprise that Britain has executed an American citizen in this manner. Foreign fighters, particularly from the West, are of immense propaganda value for the Islamic State, so using one in this example shouldn't be a surprise. Security services in the United Kingdom are working tirelessly to try and identify this man. It is going to be a difficult job, but I do believe in the next couple of days we will see something come into fruition.
Really? In the next couple of days, they can identify this guy supposedly by taking scans of his eyes and his hands?
Well, there's that side of it, but there's also the hope that someone from Britain who used to know this man will recognize his voice and come forward and alert the authorities in that way. There is also a huge amount of resources being expended in trying to source who this man is. Also, there are individuals who are in contact with foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq at the moment over social media platforms like Twitter, who will be working tirelessly to see if they can find out who this man is.
Arsalan, even Al-Qaeda has denounced this group because of its savagery, yet some young men, including Americans, about 100, are drawn to it. President Obama likened it to a cancer that's spreading. What's the attraction?
Well, Carol, I think, the first thing that people have to understand is even though, ISIS tends to call themselves the Islamic State, everything that they are doing, including, the execution of James Foley, is completely un-Islamic, and the vast majority of Muslims worldwide condemn the acts of people like ISIS. Even the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia recently called ISIS and Al-Qaeda public enemy #1 for Islam and Muslims. And so it's important for people not to conflate Islam and Muslims with the acts of ISIS. It's more of a dystopic cult, similar to the Khmer Rouge was in Cambodia in terms of, an ideology that just, calls for wanton terror and murder. And, instead of the Islamic State, ISIS should probably be called something like the ignorant, sacrilegious, intolerant society. And so we Muslims worldwide want to show people that we are as horrified with the acts of ISIS as anyone else.
And Imam, I know you said something similar to me off camera, that ISIS shouldn't be called ISIS, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have to fight them on four major fronts. We have to fight them ideologically, we have to fight them in terms of their branding, we have to fight them militarily, and we have to fight them economically. As Iftikhar pointed out, we should not even call them Islamic State. We should call them the terrorist assassins of Syria and Iraq. We should rebrand it that way, and we should all universally agree, because that is important in terms of shaping the perception of both non-Muslims and Muslims about this group.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you defeat this horrible group. A lot of people wonder why more Arab countries aren't coming out and condemning James Foley's death. Qatar just came out, for example, but people were expecting a huge outcry from other Arab nations, and it hasn't come.
Well, as Iftikhar has pointed out, the Chief Mufti of Saudi Arabia, and this is all part of the general witch's brew that we're seeing right now happening in the Middle East, and especially in Syria and Iraq. We have Sunni-Shia conflict in which the Saudis and the Iranians are the major geopolitical centers promoting this, and ISIS, or this group, which let's call them the Tassis, the terrorist assassins of Syria and Iraq, are basically the most virulent. It's like when you have an antibiotic, you don't take it for the full week, you take it for like 4 or 5 days, and a more virulent strain. This is the most virulent strain of the attempts to establish an Islamic State.
Honestly, I think that we all realize that, but it's the United States that's tasked with the fighting in Iraq to defeat these ISIS forces. I mean, other Arab nations aren't sending weapons into Iraq to help in the fight.
Well, they should.
Or boots on the ground.
They should.
Why aren't they?
Well, I can't answer that question. All I can say, I mean, I'm not a military expert. I'm not a political expert on why. I mean, there are reasons. And we know that, for example, that the appetite for Americans for boots on the ground, the capacity of people for boots on the ground, this is part of an ongoing narrative. We've seen how this has come out of anti-Sunni sentiment by the Iraqi Shia leadership. So this is like a perfect storm, the perfect circumstances which allowed this particular virulent strain of initially promoting the rights of the Sunnis and now becoming purely terrorists in that they assassinate anybody who is seen as an impediment towards the political agenda.
Well, let me just pose that question to Charlie, because I really want to get at the involvement of Arab nations and whether that would make a difference. Charlie?
Yes, well, I agree with the Imam that they absolutely should get involved. There are clearly political workings going on that mean that they are hesitating, but I would really implore regional countries to get involved in this, because it is their responsibility, as well as the United States, the United Kingdom and France, for example. It's their responsibility to act on this as well, because it's their problem. It will reach to their borders, and it's imperative that another country or countries within the region act on this, because besides anything else, just having Western countries attacking their positions in Iraq and Syria will play into their crusader paradigm, and this is immensely valuable for the jihadist ideology. So we need other countries to get involved in this to show that this is not the case, to cleave that paradigm in two.
Arsalan Iftikhar, Charlie Cooper, and Imam Faisal Abdurrahman, thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate it.